A few days ago, I got a call from a customer who wanted to return his lumber. He said that the wood was defective. He had gotten some kiln-dried white oak from us. Now, I know that this wood was good. It had been about 5 to 6 weeks after he had brought the wood home, and he said that the wood was warping after he had cut it, which tells me a few things. A, there's a moisture problem here, and B, a lot can happen in 5 to 6 weeks. The wood was not defective, but there was a problem in his shop. So I'm gonna walk you through exactly what happened, because whatever caused his wood to move is probably happening in your shop right now. I'm also gonna show you how to read a board for defects before you ever touch it with a saw blade. And I'm gonna show you a tool that'll tell you more about what your wood's gonna do than any moisture meter ever will. I can imagine his surprise when he came back the next morning. The boards had moved overnight. Now he wanted to know if I had sold him a bad product. Before I could answer that, I had 2 questions. Did the board move while he was cutting it, or did it move after he had walked away? Think about a loaded spring. If the board pinches your blade as you're cutting through it, or if it opens up as you're going through the board, then that's a kiln problem. The tension was locked inside the board before you even started cutting it. That's called case hardening. With case hardening, the outside of the board dried faster than the inside of the board during the kiln drying process. But if the board laid flat at the saw with no pinching, no springing, and then moved overnight, that's not a kiln problem, my friend. That's an environment problem. And those things require completely different solutions. The wood was not defective. Something in his shop had gotten to it, and I think I know what it was. Now, I know you've heard me say this before, but wood is hygroscopic. Wood will constantly be drinking in and releasing moisture until it matches the air in the room or in the environment around it. It's like a hard sponge that drinks in the moisture and also lets it out. But that's where most people get confused here. People assume that since it was kiln dried, that it was dried, sealed, and never to be re-moisturized again. Wrong. It's actually quite the opposite. So when my customer let that lumber sit in his shop for like 4 to 6 weeks, that is plenty of time for relative humidity to do its thing. But after a few more questions, here's what I found. He was stacking his lumber on the concrete floor. Concrete wicks moisture straight up from the ground underneath it and disperse that moisture up into the air. This is especially true here in Minnesota, where the humidity tends to spike in the summer. To a piece of wood that's dried to 8%, that floor feels like a swamp. Let me ask you this. Is your lumber sitting on your concrete floor right now? Keep that thought, because I got a $5 fix before this video is over. If the air in the shop sits at around 50% relative humidity, which is fairly normal, then the wood settles around 8 or 9% moisture content. That's basically the most important part of the video. But wait, there's more. If a shop has no air conditioning, a concrete floor, and it's the middle of summer, that shop can easily hit 70% humidity. And at 70% relative humidity in the air, that 8% wood is gonna drink moisture until it reaches about 13%. My customer thought it was okay to put lumber on the cement. But he was wrong. Even in our kiln-dried warehouse, it's sketchy to put lumber close to the cement like that. But we have an in-floor heating system. Along with air conditioning, we have proper air circulation in the summer months. So I want to do a test. There in that kiln-dried warehouse, it's pretty dry. But over in the pallet shop, where conditions are much more humid, we're gonna test this piece of white oak to show you how much moisture will enter the wood when you leave it on the cement. We're gonna run a moisture meter over it. Then when the test is over, we're gonna find out how much moisture has entered the board. And we got ourselves about 7% moisture content. So let's head over there and find a good spot to put this down on the cement. I can already feel a moisture change as soon as I get in here. It's cooler, more humid in here. I think somewhere in the back here. Ha-ha! Put it under here. And then we're gonna check back in a few days and find out how much moisture that board has drank. So in the winter, when the air is much more drier, it's the exact opposite. Let me know in the old complaint box below if you want me to make a video on winter moisture content. But we got a pretty good idea as to why the wood moved. But here's what I really wanted him to understand. There was a warning sign that was sitting on the end of some of those boards before he ever picked up the saw. He just didn't know how to read it. Now here's a nifty little trick that probably makes this entire video worth it. You want to look at the end grain of every single board that you're ever going to use ever. You're looking for the pith, the very center of the tree. Looks something like this right here, right there. That's the pith. Wood at the pith moves at a different rate than wood farther out. So if you rip a board and the pith ends up at one side or the other, that edge is going to pull harder than the other as moisture changes. Now, I know most of you experienced woodworkers already know this, but this is where you can help others in the comments section by sharing your experience with others about wood grain. Wood that's closer to the pith swells faster, and the other edge shrinks faster. Not always, but most of the time. And then you end up with a twist or a cup that seems to come out of nowhere. And so, before you make your cuts, look at the end grain and then plan your cuts around it. Here's something to think about. When you rip or plane a board, you expose the side of the wood that hasn't seen air for years, decades, hundreds of years maybe. If there's a moisture imbalance in that shop, then the board will take it in. So it is entirely possible that when my customer laid a freshly cut board flat on his bench in that damp shop, that the top face breathed freely and the bottom face was trapped against the bench. That imbalance could cause a cup in just a few hours. Now here's a finishing trap that catches even the most experienced woodworkers. A woodworker puts a beautiful finish on the show side of the project, but leaves the underside bare. One side is sealed, and the other side is still breathing. The board doesn't have a choice. It pulls towards the unfinished face. So the logical solution is to finish the top and finish the bottom, right? Some would even argue to finish all 6 sides of the board if you can, but I don't know about that. I honestly want to know what you think about finishing all 6 sides of the board. Let me know in the old trash can below. This is a hygrometer. It measures the moisture in the air right there in your shop. On Amazon, it costs about $15 for the cheap ones. My customer already owned a moisture meter for checking his wood, but he was checking the wood, not the air. Those, my friends, as we know, are 2 different things. When he saw 8% on his boards, he thought he was good. But if he had put a hygrometer in that shop and seen 70%, he would have known immediately that those boards are not gonna stay at 8%. You're gonna wanna use the hygrometer to check the air, and then use your moisture meter to check the wood. Experts suggest you're gonna want the moisture in your air to be around 50%, give or take. And the wood should be about 7 to 9% moisture content, depending on the species. I've included a YouTube shopping link right here so that you could purchase a hygrometer if you're watching on your phone. If you're not watching on your phone, I'll put an Amazon link in the old scrap pile below and give you a QR code right here in case some of you guys are watching on your television. You can just whip out your phone and then scan the QR code right here. What if the damage is done? There are 2 things we could try. If we remember from earlier, the board cupped because the cup side is drier than the other side. That, along with tension, is our culprit here. As you can see, this board is definitely cupped. We're gonna take it outside and I'll show you what to do. And you're gonna wanna take the cupped board outside early in the morning while the dew is still on the grass. Put the board cupped side down on the grass. That way the dew can re-moisturize the bottom side, and then the morning sun will dry out the curved side. You're gonna leave it like that for a few hours, but keep an eye on it though. You don't want it bowing back the other way. Some would argue that this doesn't work, because once it cups, it always cups. Fair, but there's a second thing that we could try. We could try stickers. Well, actually it's stickers and weight. In case you didn't know, stickers are small strips of wood that are laid across the stack so that air can move between each level of wood. Stack the cup board with stickers between layers and put some weight on top, and then let gravity and airflow do their work over time. This might work, it might not. It depends on how much the board has moved and how the grain is sitting. What I want to show you is how to make sure it never gets here in the first place. My customer could have prevented it, and so can you. One of the ways he could have prevented it costs only $5. And the other way is just a simple change in habit. Let me show you. Now I know you've heard this one before. The plastic barrier method. If lumber has to sit on or even close to the concrete floor, lay a plastic sheet down first. It stops the ground moisture from wicking up into the lumber before it ever starts. I'll include a link in the old trash can below here, and I'll put a QR code for a plastic sheet right up here, so that if you're watching on TV, you can just whip out your phone and scan the QR code. And just so you know, we receive a small commission off of anything that you buy using one of our links in this episode. This is at no extra cost to you, by the way. It's just a simple way to help us out with something that you're probably already gonna buy. Maybe. I don't know. The third suggestion on the list here is resting your lumber after rough cuts. Once my customer made those first couple passes, he should have stickered the boards and let them rest for a day before moving on with his project. You see, rough cutting releases tension and opens up fresh fiber. The board needs time to settle into its new shape before you commit to its final dimensions. Rough cut, sticker, and wait a day to see what happens. And for the most important one, number 3, this is the one that could have saved my customer's lumber. He stacked the lumber in his shop where he works with no stickers. But the project wasn't gonna go in his shop, it was gonna go in his house. 2 different environments, 2 different moisture levels. But when he started moving the finished project into the house, the wood started adjusting to a completely different room, and it started moving all over again. Oh no, I forgot that wood test. Aha! We got the moisture meter. Let's head over there into the shop and check that piece of wood, see where that moisture's sitting at now. Oh, it feels wet. 13%. Flip it over. 16%. That's the part that was sitting on the ground too. It just goes to show you, your wood's gonna drink up that moisture from the cement. Before you start any project, move your stickered lumber into the place where the project's gonna live forever. Get it in or near that kitchen a week or 2 before you cut. Let the wood read the entire room, not just your shop. This, my friends, is called acclimation. I've seen it a million times on Facebook. People always posting pictures of their tables asking why it cracked. Now I know this isn't the only reason why this happens, but more often than not, it's because people don't take this into consideration. My customer did none of these. And by the end of our phone call, he understood exactly why his wood moved. And instead of issuing a refund, which we still would have done if he really wanted it, we fixed the problems. Let me show you how we did it. My customer called wanting to return his lumber, but what he actually got was worth way more. By the end of the conversation, he was going back to check the relative humidity of his shop, laying down a plastic sheet on his concrete floor, and re-sticker his boards with airflow on all 6 sides. Read the end grain before you cut. Give rough cut parts a day to settle before final passes. Sticker your lumber in the environment where the project is gonna live. Finish both sides of the board, not just the pretty one. If you do those things, then the wood will do its job. Now, everything I just taught you assumes one thing. It assumes that you know the species of wood that you're actually working with, because different species will move differently, dramatically different. And most woodworkers, if you showed them a board, especially one on the wall behind me, they could not tell you with certainty what the heck they're looking at. But there's a tool out there that can help you identify species every single time. And here's the catch: it can fit in your shirt pocket. Well, you get what I mean. And no, it's not your phone. We'll show you how to identify any wood species using that simple tool in this video right here. We'll see you there, brother and sister. Whoa, bro. Ruining my shot. And then, oh, are you still here? That video right there. Bye.